I have a few tennis clients who've come to me at lower levels or recreational levels, and they tell me in their relationship to the coach, maybe they don't want to offend the coach. Maybe they're kind of a people pleaser on some level, and they don't want to tell the coach that they're not going to use a certain stroke that they've been working to implement, or to tell the coach maybe, hey, like too much stimuli, like boundary, right? Because it's on the fly, so it's too much right now. I got to go through my process from point to point. I'll self-correct. So how do you build that in, right, with a tennis player, especially from a young age, like this ability to kind of tell you what they need? And as a coach, is that a hard thing to kind of self-monitor around?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as coaches, and I work with the university level players, but also junior players or adult players that are more recreational. So I think part of being a good coach is teaching a tennis player to be self-reliant, because it's actually rare that a coach is going to be on the sideline with them, being able to coach them through a match. There are situations in professional tennis as well as college tennis where you will have a coach on your side, but most of the time it's just you out there. Like an MMA fighter in the ring, they might have their team in between rounds that they can go to. But when they're actually out there, it's not like, football where you have 10 guys on either side of you, or basketball or soccer or a sport like that where you're surrounded by teammates. It's just you out there. You have to be self-reliant. You have to be able to figure out what's going on around you and adapt to the circumstances. So I think, trying to teach athletes to be self-reliant, but also as a coach, when you do have that opportunity to be out there with them, rather than overcoaching and feeling like you have to say too much, which is certainly something I feel like I went through in the beginning. Sometimes learning that less is more, learning to, say, you got this, just trust your strokes, go for it. You know what to do. You've been through it before, rather than really trying to lay out a very, very specific game plan for them. So just sort of letting them take control.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest areas of growth, in my hat as a youth coach, is when you watch, Phil Jackson or one of these coaches that says almost nothing, right? Like they just watching, and then they call a timeout, and they let the players sit down, they let them talk, and then they come into the end and say little, if anything, you know,
Absolutely.
and learning that, like, what it was, after a win say little, after a loss say less, so really learning about the emotions of players, especially if you're working with like downtown LA soccer players here in Los Angeles, where their parents, some of them were professionals at 13 and 15 years of age in their own country. They're going to have a hard ride home. The pressure's felt, the culture is intense. So really being careful around, the intensity. Whereas when I coach, I tend to be hyper verbal. It's almost like the anxiety extends out through being verbal, and that doesn't always make an effective communicator. Was there someone who modeled that for you, learning how to, say less, or how did you learn that? Were there coaches you had that you were like, that way works more than the other?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I've certainly been around coaches who have been on both sides of that. And I think I myself have been, in many ways, been on both sides of that. I think you bring up Phil Jackson, and through watching The Last Dance recently and just seeing his Zen-like personality, and I know he worked a lot.
I was going to ask about your Corona-based viewing, your quarantine-based viewing. So
I was locked in, absolutely.